last year, we saw crisp, crystal clear execution. People keep opening the door. Every time the door opens to the press box, you have to freeze because the wind blows in. It just takes your breath away. The execution was so crisp last year that this year things just didn't seem quite to click, and we don't want to harp on the same thing, but I think they missed Eric Webb today.
They no doubt missed Eric Webb, but you don't want to take away the fact of this great defense of Annandale. Annandale played outstanding defense, and with the way they were able to stop that inside running game early, you didn't really see the execution to Lewis until the second half, and I think that becomes a confidence factor. And of course, you also had some turnovers early for Pulaski County. Obviously, weather had something to do with that for both teams. All of those kinds of factors tend to take away some of the belief you have in the way your offense is going to run, and then that can be just enough to keep you a measure away from a score that ends up 14-7 against you in your second trip to the state finals.
Well, you're looking at some of the happiest people on the planet Earth right now. As you watch this broadcast some 5 days after it happened, I'm sure they'll be still celebrating on 4-year run in Annandale, Virginia. I always thought that was a nice name for a high school address. It's not their official address, but it's the street that runs in front of the high school. They'll be partying in Annandale, Virginia tonight. If you're not familiar where that's located, it's right along the Beltway in Fairfax County, Virginia. And, of course, is this being seen all over the state of Virginia and several states around it. This is a Washington, D.C. metropolitan team, which has played some of the tougher teams in the state. Pulaski County couldn't be more opposite. They come from the southwestern part of the state, where it's not near as populous, not near as metropolitan. These are, I won't say country folk, but they're simple, hard-working people. There's a lot of industry in southwest Virginia. You heard the train horn, which was pretty much silent in the second half. I know the Pulaski County fans would have liked to have been blowing their train horn a lot louder and a lot longer and a lot more often, but they just didn't get the opportunities. And in fact, Pulaski County was held off the scoreboard until there were 5 minutes and 24 seconds left in this game, and they provided some real excitement down toward the wire as they had a fumble recovery with 3:28 left to play, but Annandale stiffened and held on fourth down, and well, that's the way it should be, Willie. It should come down to the last series. That's exactly the way we would hope it would happen after 14 games, that it would come down to the very last minute.
You're right about that, and we've seen two very exciting games in the last 2 weeks. Thomasdale, Annandale last week, which went into overtime, and then the game today where, with about a minute left, Pulaski County on fourth down still had an opportunity to try to get into the end zone to at least tie this game, or maybe able to go for the win to keep their state championship in hand for another year. So it was just an outstanding game. I think it goes without saying that the weather condition here was much more difficult than most people could imagine in having to play a football game with wind chills at about zero, a wind at about 30, 40 miles an hour, gusting constantly throughout the game. So just to have the players maintain their sense of self, I guess, because I was saying earlier that I remember playing a game against the New York Jets where my fingers got so cold I couldn't fasten my chin strap. And to maintain your presence of mind in these kind of conditions is very admirable.
Well, it should have affected Annandale more, those tough conditions. We would predicted that it would, because they rely on the pass much more. But I think they had a game plan when they came in. I mean, right down to the fact they said, if the wind's in our face, we'll be more conservative. When the wind's at our back, we'll go for it a little more. I think they took into account the weather and really adapted to it well today.
There's no doubt about that from the offensive standpoint, because we saw early on when they had a few opportunities against Pulaski County on a fourth down with the wind in their face, instead of even attempting to throw it, the quarterback, McPhail, kept the ball and was stopped. But then as the wind was at their back, they were able to get the pass to Seeger, and getting that pass to Seeger was what allowed them to go in for their first touchdown of the afternoon. So they utilized everything very well, but I think also their defense appeared to have a very, very good concept of what to expect from Pulaski County, and that really showed up in the length of time they were able to keep Pulaski County off of the scoreboard.
Well, let's take a little bit of a break here while we reorganize ourselves and try to come up with some of the highlights of today's game. We'll replay them for you. We take a timeout now. You're watching the game of the week. It's the state final game, and the state final score is the Annandale Adams 14, Pulaski County Cougars 7. Annandale's the champs. We'll be back.
It seems that every day we hear the phrase, "Don't drink and drive." Is it the fashionable thing to say these days? Or is it a genuine concern? This is Lisa McKay, and I'm concerned. Nearly 500 Virginians lost their lives in alcohol-related accidents over a year. Over 15,000 others were injured, all on Virginia's highways. The next time you think about doing one for the road, please do me a favor. Think again.
All through the night, U-Crop's refrigerated trucks rush freshly prepared foods from our kitchen to our stores. It's the only way we can deliver on this promise. At U-Crops, we never add preservatives to the foods we prepare. And we sell every item in time for you to enjoy the peak of freshness at home for at least 2 to 3 days. And that's saying a mouthful.
Well, which one are you doing? I'd rather have the coach than the mic. Welcome back to the press box at WT Woodson High School. The final score again, Annandale 14 and Pulaski County 7. And that'll end a football season in the state of Virginia for 1993. The AAA Division VI champion has been crowned, and it's the Adams of Annandale. And in just a moment, once he's finished with his radio interview, Dick Adams, the head coach of Annandale, is going to join us here for a brief chat. And I think he's probably got some things that we got to grill this guy and find out, how did he stop Pulaski, make him look so bad?
Well, I think the thing that we really saw today was that a very well executed team's plan of what the coaches had decided they could do today, and that was both on offense and defense. That took into the fact the weather conditions that they had to face this afternoon. So seeing that kind of plan work out, you're right, it'd be a great opportunity to have Coach Adams with us to just talk about what they were able to do today to get his first state championship. And I think, no doubt, he's very proud of the way his players played this afternoon.
Oh, as well he should be. Now, of course, we talked about the winning tradition at Annandale High School. They won twice in the 60s. I believe it was 65 and 67, and then again in, I think, 72 or 3 and 78. And all those times they had the same coach or assistant coach, Bill Hardage, was there. So this is kind of a new generation. These are the guys who served under Hardage. One of them, Dick Adams, who graduated in 1975, and he's got a coaching staff all full of Annandale High School graduates, and I think they really passed on that tradition. I mentioned earlier, I went to their team breakfast this morning, and on each table, you know, everybody's eating pancakes and everything. Each table had a different, football trophy on it to remind these kids of the heritage, and I think it really had something to do with how fired up they played today.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. When you think about the way that young men try to, quote, rise to the occasion, and you try to give them some way to show the history of those things that have happened before many of them were born. But having a chance to come here, as you said, to see some of the history this morning, the trophies that the schools have been able to attain, and the coach, congratulations for an outstanding opportunity today to get your first state championship. I just think it's a great honor to what you were able to do with your ball club here this afternoon.
Very much.
Well, tell us, Dick, we really didn't, when I spoke to you this morning, I didn't ask for the exact rundown of your game plan, but what is it that you did, and how did you get, what was your defensive scheme that really made the offensive scheme of Pulaski County ineffective, mostly in the first half especially?
Well, what we tried to do was, again, like I kind of mentioned in pregame, was that in playing this wing T, misdirection offense, you have to kind of have everybody have a responsibility. And we had certain keys for our linebackers. 55, Corey Peterson played his tail off, and then had to the strong side linebacker. Their number one, the number one thing that they do is run the off tackle buck sweep, and we were able to key it with Corey based on what the guards were doing. They'd block down, and he'd read it and scrape off the outside end, and then they came back and made an adjustment and ran what was like a power, where they kind of base blocked him, and they gave him a bad read, and they had some pretty good plays with it. And we just kind of, sucked it up, and, our strong safety squeezed it a little bit better, and we stayed at home on the weak side, quarterback draws, the quick pitch, things like that, and shut the trap down inside. Again, they don't throw real well, and that helped us to focus on the run.
Well, one thing that you hoped would happen really did happen. Low-scoring game, and a low-scoring game with you in the lead. That's particularly important because without the passing game, they can't come back as well as a lot of other teams could have.
Right. I mean, my biggest fear was, again, in the fourth quarter, the wind. And I talked. There was about they were driving the football, and there was about 2:34 left. And I said, what if we stop them here and we get it back, and then we can't get a first down and they call timeout, and they have anywhere from a minute, or what do we do? Should we, are we going to try to punt it, or are we going to try to just go for it, or take a safety and kick it? So, that was the big concern. I watched Robinson last year in that same situation, and they took a safety, which I thought was smart, and they kicked it, and then Pulaski made a big play and won that game.
Yeah, they won on a late field goal, I believe, to beat Robinson in this very same field last year.
Right.
Well, your team certainly rose to the occasion. The offense started to look a little bit like Pulaski County. Your ball control was excellent today. Kept your offense on the field and your defense off so they could be rested up. Talk a little bit about what you did with the offense in order to get their ball control, really fine-tuned today. Keep the Pulaski offense off.
Well, we'd really worked all week on trying to throw. We want to run a lot of short drop back, stop routes, crossing patterns, things like that, and that was very hard to do. John threw a couple of really nice balls on some play action. He got on the corner a couple times, but that was about it. And then we just up front, Daniels and Dredge and Matt Garnett, Sloan and Clark just did a nice job of really kind of knocking them off the ball a little bit to give us a couple first downs and to score when we picked up the fumble down there, and take advantage of that type of thing, if not just get field position.
I noticed that you were extremely happy when Art, your kicker, came off after that really high snap that he must just have been barely able to get with the top of his fingers, and then had a presence of mind to throw the ball away. You looked like you were pretty happy. It was a bad play, but it could have been a lot worse.
Oh, no, he did a great job because he threw the ball away, which put the ball back at the line of scrimmage, and which was about the 45-yard line. And Dan, we might even have punted the ball that far if we'd gotten it off. So it was just really heads up.
And, of course, if it had gone over his head, then you've been in really deep shape. Tell me what you thought at the end of the game when Pulaski got it back for that one more try on the turnover. You must have been pretty, your fingers were already crossed. They must have been double crossed by then.
Well, we just, we talked at halftime that I knew that team over there had tremendous pride and tradition. No way were they going to lay down and let somebody, whip them. And they came back. They had their chance. Defensively, we stood up as a team and shut them down. And that's just exactly what you got to do. I mean, that's the way a championship game should be played. We were fortunate. We won the game. Our kids played well, but it was exciting, and both teams, I thought, played their hearts out.
Hey, look on as we do here. We'll show you a replay of some of the plays that we saw in today's game. I'm not sure which one's coming up first. This is probably the long pass play. This is McPhail in his long pass to Seeger. What do you call that route?
This is a belly pass, and the flanker's running what we call a flag, or like a post corner route. And it's just a great ball by John and a great catch by Chris. Just beautiful. We had just gotten the wind, but even the wind was a crosswind. That's a lot harder to do than it looks. Get it there, number one, catch it and stay in bounds, and that's a first-year player, Chris Seeger.
That's amazing. Not only is he your kicker, but he's a great wide receiver, and he made an excellent play there to get under that ball. And do not underestimate how much effect the wind had on this game. And I don't mean you, I mean the people watching at home, because that was extremely difficult. That was the first time you'd been able to turn around and get the wind at his back. And even then, it's really tough to judge that wind. Even if it's in your favor, that doesn't mean you can still complete every pass.
Right. Well, it was really strong coming across the field. And, for John to get it like he did there was phenomenal.
Well, of course, that long 55-yard pass play from McPhail to Seeger set the tone. That was the first 7 points scored in this football game, and they held up for a while. And then you had another long drive where it was wrapped up by Jennings. You're up 14-0. Things looking pretty good for you. But as you mentioned at halftime, you must have given them a real dose of reality about Pulaski County.
Well, we did, and I mean, we had a lot of young kids that were very excited. And Pulaski County didn't win 22 games in a row, a Virginia State championship, and have the tradition they do by sitting around and letting people, whip them. And their fans were here. You saw 4,000 people here by noon. And they have a tremendous following, and they take it very serious. We knew they'd come out very hard and work to play until the game was over.
We got another replay lined up. We'll take a look at the monitor here. I know it was a fumble recovery. Oh, this is the one where I thought that there could be some interference called there because Millen was bumped into the ball.
Well, what happened was, and I don't know if it actually hit him, but Derek Crittenden, 17, thought it did. I was upset because I thought Crittenden was just coming up trying to field it, and we wanted to get away from it. But Derek thought that it hit Todd, and so that's why he went for it. And if that's what he thought, that's what he should have done. It was a big play. We came right in after that series and stopped him. And just played some great defense.
Well, that could have been a critical play, and I agreed with you, and that's what Willie and I guessed when we watched it originally, is that Crittenden was covering. He thought Millen had touched it, and he did the best he could. And it was interesting that we talked about at halftime that you probably told everybody on the punts into the wind, just get the heck away from him. And in the next punt in the third quarter, it looked like a bomb went off. All your players were diving for the sidelines and getting away for the ball. Obviously, you told them that those punts are going to be an adventure all day.
Right. We just said that, we just want our people just to hold folks up on the line of scrimmage and get away from it. And our deep people, unless it came right to you, just get away, and let it hit and roll. Because with the wind, I mean, they will only get 10, 15 yards a punt, if that.
Now, Jennings wrapped up the scoring for your team in the first half with a 3-yard run into the end zone, and I believe we have that one on tape for you to look at. What do you call the play that he scored on?
Well, I'll tell you, this is what we call we just call 33 base. It's just an off-tackle base play. We base block up front with the fullback kicking out, and did a great job inside. And Eric sees a little seam, shoulders are down, gets it across the goal line. Beautiful job up front on the offensive line against an excellent defense.
I think Santa Ana was probably one of the keys to your offense. Now, we watched a game last week where you played Thomas Dale and Richmond. They were never able to get their second back, Brian Brooks, into the game. You shut him down. I think that had an effect on them. But today, your team got some real good work out of Santa Ana, both blocking and running the ball. Makes it easier for Jennings.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, Giovanni Santa Ana and Jasmine Glenn, our other fullback, tailback, have come in all year and done a great job and both been threats. And again, we've been able to rest Eric or, just get the ball to somebody else. And the three of them have been a great backfield.
I'm not sure if we have any more replays lined up for you to look at. I guess not, Coach. We're going to turn you loose now as we take another timeout. We'll come back and wrap everything up from Woodson High School. Couldn't congratulate you more for taking my Annandale Adams to the state championship and putting another trophy in the case. And we hope maybe we'll see you again down the road.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Coach Dick Adams of the Annandale Adams, not spelled the same way. Sounds a lot like, at least the way I say it. When we come back, Willie Lanier and I will be here in the press box to wrap things up from Woodson High School in Fairfax, Virginia. The final score, Annandale 14, Pulaski County 7. That means the Adams of Annandale are the AAA Division VI state champions for 1993. Come back right after this.
Sports. Exhilarating, rewarding, fun, and injuries. About half of the people who participate in sports activities suffer some kind of injury. At Chippenham Sports Medicine Center, we're doing something about that. Seminars on injury prevention, coaches' workshops, and football clinics are just some of the programs geared to help prevent accidents and injuries from occurring. Sports nutrition will help you understand how eating habits affect performance and potential. When a sports injury does occur, you'll find confidence in Richmond's only sports medicine physician who's on call 24 hours a day. Our full-time staff also includes certified athletic trainers, physical therapists, and a nutritionist. In most cases, physical physical therapy and rehabilitation programs can have you back in the peak of your game quickly. Feel better, train better, and compete better. Call us today. Chippenham Sports Medicine Center, 320-7272.
When you need professional body work to restore your car good as new, Bruce's Body Shop is the only one for you. 'Cause you can count on service at Bruce's and the best in quality too. We're Bruce's Body Shop and we really care for you. It just makes sense to call Bruce's. Bruce's Body Shop.
And we're back to the press box at W.T. Woodson High School. As we mentioned at the top of the program, this serves as the regional headquarters for games here. It was where the regional final was played when Annandale beat West Springfield, and then today they moved the state finals here because, well, they have the capacity. It's over 10,000 here, and with the visitors from Pulaski County, which we must credit again for covering such a long distance, that's a real important consideration.
You're right, it always is, and that's something that the Virginia State High School League looks at in terms of the site for their ball games, because they want to have, especially for the visiting team, the opportunity for fans to have facilities and obviously enough seating to support them. So here at Woodson today we had that also, and the fans had a chance to see the great number of fans from Pulaski County who follow their team around the state, who have that air horn that for them this year it didn't quite work to get them to win, but that gives them a lot of cheer to use that air horn to really spur their team on. So it's always great to just see the kind of community spirit and involvement that revolves around high school sports.
Well, it was interesting enough that they even repeated as a state championship game contender, remembering, of course, that Pulaski County was the defending Division VI AAA Virginia State champion. So even getting back here was an accomplishment in and of itself. And I don't want to hammer this point too hard, but Eric Webb was a big missing element of both their offense and defense. I know when they watch this broadcast, they're going to say, oh, I wish we'd have just had a chance to find out what it would have been like with him, but they didn't.
Well, you're right about that, and as we had spoken about Eric Webb, who we saw last year and really championed the kind of skills that he happens to have. But today, the way the game was played in this kind of weather condition, defense really stood out, and defense on both sides of the ball, which kept the score at 14-7. And the weather condition, even though Coach Adams said this was the way it was last year here, this has probably been one of the most awesome weather conditions I've seen for any high school game. And as I said, that the door to the press box just flew open, and now we have about 0-degree wind chill as we continue to speak about that, which the players had to deal with all day.
Well, we're living proof, to be sure, that the weather here has been difficult to handle today. Wind chill factor's got to be down near 0, and any player who played well in today's game should be lauded, but some maybe more than others, and it's probably time to award our Bruce's Player of the Week. Gets himself a nice jacket and the accolades that go with it.
You're right about that, and I think for this game, defense, something I'm very familiar with, number 65 for Annandale, and that's Dredge. And the first name, I believe, is Steve Dredge, who played an outstanding day. I called his name much more from a tackle stat standpoint than any other player on the team, and he was continually in the backfield doing those kinds of things that you want a defensive player to do: disrupt, make tackles, cause the offense not to do and execute the way it wants to. And for that, Bruce's Player of the Week is Steve Dredge in the state championship game for his ball club, the Annandale Adams.
Well, Steve is a 6', 200-pound senior, and he came into today's game number 3 on the team in tackles and number 1 in sacks, and he's a second-team all-regional player. And I have a feeling that this would be a great way for him to end up his senior season, not only being part of a state championship team and not only being Bruce's Player of the Week, but just playing a great game like he did.
You're right about that, and I think one thing that goes without saying all year, we talk about the fact of the jacket that the players get for being the Bruce's Player of the Week, and the jacket really will come in handy for Steve. We might have to ask Bruce to put a little bit more into it, because the game was played in this kind of weather condition, but Steve played an outstanding game today and is to be complimented for the way he helped his team to the state championship.
We should mention that Bruce's Body Shop is a Richmond, Virginia area body Shop, and they have been a very strong supporter of Central Virginia's high school football broadcast. We should tell you that Willie and I are commentators in Central Virginia on a weekly basis for the high school football there. We rotate around from team to team, try to cover as many as we can, and we take all those teams through the playoff. And since Annandale beat the Central Virginia representative, which was Thomas Dale High School, in last week's game, we made the commitment to follow them along to the state championship. And of course, we had intimate knowledge of Pulaski County, having been in Richmond last year, taking the state championship from that same team, Thomas Dale. So it just kind of all wrapped up perfectly for us. Some teams we had seen, and that's always good. So we invite you, if you're in the Central Virginia area, to always keep a lookout for the broadcast in Central Virginia. It's on cable and over-the-air broadcast there. This is our first foray into home team sports. If we were good boys and girls, perhaps they'll invite us back next year to do it for you again. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, you can get yourself a taped copy of this game. And if you stand by for just 1 second, we'll throw up the address on the screen so that if you'd like to have yourself a copy of this fine football game, whether you're an Annandale or Pulaski County fan or just a fan of good football in general, you can request that. And we also want to mention our good friends at the Lansing Sports Network who do produce this game, Pete Lansing, and our good friends at Chippenham Medical Center, a Richmond area hospital whose sports medicine program has underwritten our broadcasts in Central Virginia these 4 years, and last 3 of which I've been with. Willie's been with the broadcast since its inception. They've been very strong promoters of this high school broadcast on television.
They really have been. I think it's been great to have the opportunity for me to get back into broadcasting football and seeing the enthusiasm at that high school level and to see the development of players in the central region and then even to the state championship game, and the great enthusiasm of the fans all around the state as they support on those Friday nights, really all across America, this aspect of football. So it's something that I think it's great to see the kind of participation of the sponsors that we've had. It's great to see home team sports carrying this state championship as well as they carried Maryland State Championship, and I think it's just a constant continuing growth of that high school sports calendar that really continues to add to what the fan enjoys from an athletic standpoint.
Well, we don't know how it is where you are, but where we come from in Central Virginia and in Southwest Virginia, where Pulaski County is from, and even here in Northern Virginia, high school football is big. We mentioned that tape. If you'd like to get a copy of today's broadcast professionally duplicated for you on VHS cassette, simply send your $15 check with a note on the face of the check which indicates which game, because we cover a whole season's worth, this, of course, being the state finals. 1403 Huguenot Road is where to mail it, in care of the Game of the Week. We're in Midlothian, Virginia, and the zip code is 23113, and allow 10 days or 2 weeks before it finally arrives back in your mailbox. But you'll be happy. $15 is probably a pretty good bargain for a video cassette these days, and you'll get a first-generation copy, and that, of course, is probably worth the money, too. Willie, any final thoughts as we wrap up our broadcast here from Fairfax, Virginia?
Well, I think the thoughts are just, it was a great 1993 football season from start to finish, seeing the teams in the Richmond areas, they continue to try to fight through to the state championship. We had Thomas Dale and Pulaski County last year in the championship. We had a overtime game last week to allow Annandale to get here today. You had Pulaski County fighting through another season, getting back. The game comes down to a minute left in the game, 4th down. One side has to make the play. Annandale does. So I think that's the kind of thing that I always enjoy seeing in sports at any level, the drama, the work, the effort, and then someone has to be the winner or loser at the end of the season. And that's what it's been for this 1993 season, and one that I would hope to see us have the same kind of opportunity in the future.
Well, we certainly hope so. Of course, every team likes to have its destiny in its own hands, and Annandale did, and they came through with a big stop on 4th down late in the game to preserve their 14-7 lead, and that really was the ball game. I'd like to say a special thanks to Willie Lanier, who's joined me in the booth all year long, and we both look forward to hopefully another big season next year. To Derek Belcher and to Pete Lansing, who are in the truck today producing the show and putting up the video effects so well as they do, and John Lee, who's run the audio as always, and Robert Norman, Peter Albert, and Dave Jones, who are our camera people today. A special thanks to a couple of camera guys who couldn't make it, Paul Takagi and Dick Taylor, who helped us out during the regular season. But it's not just Willie and I who put this broadcast together, but all the people behind the scenes that make it happen. And our thanks to Home Team Sports for allowing us to bring our broadcast to you today. We wrap it up here from Fairfax, Virginia, where the final score was 14-7. The Annandale Adams win their 5th championship in the last 30 or so years, a big tradition there, and the pride continues to grow. Pulaski County, last year's state champion, not to repeat this year, but they played well, and their fans got to enjoy a good game. It'll be a lonely trip home for tonight. I'm Dave Bird for Hall of Famer Willie Lanier. thanks again for joining us for the broadcast. We'll see you next year, hopefully on Home Team Sports. Have a good day and enjoy high school football wherever you find it.
Sports, exhilarating, rewarding, fun, and injuries. About half of the people who participate in sports activities suffer some kind of injury. At Chippenham Sports Medicine Center, we're doing something